Welcome to our LB's The Lover of Books author chat. If this is your first time here or watching the recording, I'm so glad you found us. You're in some great company of awesome readers. I've had the opportunity to interview over 60 debut to best-selling authors, and readers just like you have helped my YouTube channel grow, and it has amassed to over 14,000 hours watched. I so appreciate you taking the time to like and comment, as it helps more readers find this content. Tonight, or as I should say, for our guest that's in Melbourne, it's more like midday for her. But we're here to discuss Lenny Marks Gets Away with Murder. This is with debut novelist Kerryn Mayne. And I want to give a couple of quotes because these were totally awesome. Sally Hepworth, author of The Good Sister, says, "With humor, heart, and characters you come to love, this is a book you will devour now and keep thinking about later." And I so agree with that. Annabel Monaghan, who one of our favorite authors, says, "Beautiful, painful, and ultimately completely satisfying. This is the story of an unlikely heroine who rises up to heal in the deepest wounds. I'll be thinking about Lenny for a long time." We're seeing a pattern. I still am thinking about Lenny. But now I want to introduce this debut author. Kerryn Mayne is a former wedding photographer. We'll have to ask about that. A current police officer, and obviously an author. When not working to attempting to solve crime, she's writing about it or preparing an endless stream of snacks for her four children. We heard earlier that they are 4 and 6. So very, very busy. She lives in the Bayside suburbs of Melbourne with her husband and children. And I'm gonna have to ask about this. A highly suspect lovebird. Okay, you have to tell me about that. Let's just go ahead and get that out the way, because tell me about this lovebird.
I love when people ask about the lovebird because I just don't think it gets brought up enough considering it's in my bio. So we had two lovebirds, Bernie and Manny from Black Books. That was a Black Books reference if you've ever seen that show. And they were my gran's birds and she couldn't have them anymore because of her cat. Anyway, lovebirds, right? Love is in the name. But Manny went ahead and killed Bernie. So it like I can't prove it. There was a little bit of domestic violence before the end, and we tried to intervene. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that bird is never getting another mate in there again because of the first one. But yeah, he's I think he's just a bit of a lone wolf. He doesn't want a friend, and he's not getting another one. So he's not a lovebird anymore. He's just a bird.
And to do it in a police officer's home, I mean, that's pretty,
I
pretty
know.
like,
Right under my watch too, like under my very careful eye, do I see my birds attacking each other. It wasn't very nice. We also have two canaries, but they get along fine. They live in another, because I'm not putting them in together, that's for sure. They live in another space, and they were also hand-me-downs from my gran, who likes to overcommit with pets and then realizes later.
well, my mother she wanted a tortoise, and the owner of the tortoise had to contact me to make sure she really had a living relative that could care for the tortoise, like how many years later, because they're like
They
hundred, it's
live
been
so
so long.
long.
Yes, yes. So
I
same.
I really like that the seller was doing their due diligence and not just trying to offload tortoises. So
Right.
you at some point might be getting a tortoise.
They're, I think, and they're very lovely, I will say. But thank
Pretty
you.
low maintenance too. Sorry,
I was
on we
just
go.
saying, I just really appreciate you coming here and taking your lunch break with us. And it's kind of cool. I don't know that I've ever had an author on the next day in the same call. So this is a first for the LBs. And let's just go ahead and get started. How did you come up with Lenny Marks? Because she's a remarkable woman, with so many quirks. And is this somebody you've thought about for a while, or did it just come to you?
Both. So I wrote a book before this book just to see if I could. Well, with not knowing that at the time. That was the book I thought, this is great. This is going to be the book that I write that gets sold, etc. And I wrote it, and it was good. It was fine, whatever, whatever. But I think overall, and I'd submitted it out, I'd done the whole, let's try and get this published thing, and it went nowhere. I went, okay, well, let's review here. So I went back and sort of processed what it was, and I thought, there's not a character in there that sticks with me. So there's not a character that like you finish turning the pages and you walk away. And I thought, well, what characters to me do that? And so I started having a look at what characters in fiction and on TV really resonated with me and why. And I loved, there's something about that quirky element. And not to play down that, there might be some neurodivergence there, but it was ultimately, I wanted a quirky character. I didn't want it to be, just pure, we're looking for a love interest. I didn't want it to be too run of the mill. I wanted her to be a bit of a weirdo. And I'm a bit of a weirdo, so that made it a little bit easier. And all those little things that, because I used to get picked on at high school for being a nerd and I hung out in the library and I'd play Scrabble with my gran who used to live in a granny flat in our backyard. So there's lots of little pepperings of me. We had Rottweilers growing up, so I know my way around a Rottweiler. So there was the want to have a character that went away with you that you wanted to love, but you also went, oh my gosh, what are you doing to me? Because you don't want it to be unbelievably lovable. You wanted her to be a little bit um exhausting at times. Like she's pushing people away when you want to go, can you not see this? Like these are your people, they've found you. So ultimately Lenny was born when I focused my attentions on what is a book that I want to read and what is a character that I want to read about. And Lenny Marks was named long before she was developed. For some reason, that name was there. I don't know how names arrive. I don't know why, but Lenny Marks was Lenny Marks. She wasn't even Helena or Helena, however you want to pronounce it. I say Helena so then it sounds like Lenny flows on from
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but she wasn't even Helena. She was just Lenny. And I actually got asked it was published in Australia first. And my publisher said to me, would you consider calling her Lenny with an I on the end? Because then it's clear that it's a woman. And they wanted to make sure people knew it was a woman protagonist. And I said no, because she's not Lenny with an I. She's specifically Lenny with a Y. It's meant to be plain. It's meant to be not chic or trying to have a cool nickname like Lenny with an I. So I went a hard no on that because everything else I was like, yeah, yeah, do whatever you want because I just please publish me. But that I was like, oh no, her name is Lenny Marks.
Well, I love that. I mean, to me, it didn't matter. Like, I loved Lenny. I loved who she was, but she's not a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination. But she is very lovable. Um, so when you're saying you're looking at characters who you like, are you referring to Friends? Like, or are you referring to some other, like, are you a big Friends fan?
Oh, Fr- So, funnily enough, the Friends references started out as being a bit of a piss take at my husband, who loves Friends, who will watch it. Like, he just puts it on and wanders around the house with it in the background, like it's just to keep him company. And so it started out as me taking a bit of the piss out of him, and also because I tell him all the time he reminds me of Ross. And I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not. Sometimes it's a compliment, sometimes it's not. And then to follow up on that, when we were picking our wedding rings, and I don't know what we were doing. We'd introduced ourselves to the guy and whatever. So my husband, whose name is Gary, picked his, and then the guy's like, "Oh, I'll put it down on the order," and he said it was Ross, wasn't it? And I'm like, "No, it's not." But you've made my day. Like this is the best thing ever. And he was so embarrassed because he got his name wrong. But I'm like, no, this sums up everything that I've wanted. Like I'm basically marrying Ross, but it's not Ross. So my husband's not nearly as annoying as Ross. But there was just that element. And then I went, oh, it's actually so much more universal than I thought it was. Because whether you've actually watched Friends or not, you get it. Like there's references there, there's characters there. Like if you ever say to somebody Ross and Rachel, you don't have to be a diehard fan to know what the reference is. So turns out, and it crosses generations. So, you know, people love it now. Like teens will know about it now.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing that that had that
Yeah.
staying power. But I found it so hilarious that it was Ross's neuroses that bugged Lenny. Like she literally calls him out in the stories, which it really cracked me up because she has so
Yeah.
many of these little
Yeah.
quirks
Because
herself.
it's her.
Yeah, it's
But it's
her.
always that way, isn't it? The things about yourself, the things that bother you the most about other people, if you were living with a version of that version of yourself, or like the carbon copy of yourself, would drive you bonkers. So I think there was a bit of the irony of that, I guess, but also the relatability of that because, it takes one to know one.
Well, she is trying to live a life, but not really living a life. Like she really wants to just at the beginning of the story make her way through, no bumps, no emotion, really, just get through each day. Is that how you would accurately accurately describe
Yeah,
her?
oh yeah. Doesn't want to change anything because it's working. So it might not be perfect, but it was working. So yeah, no need to change anything. And I think that I've been in book clubs where I actually end up out of the discussion because people are really not heatedly debating, but just discussing it. And I was in one with a group of nurses and medical professionals, and they were discussing whether Lenny's reactions to things are from trauma or from autism or what it was. And like I have my opinions on it, which is funny because I say my opinions even though I wrote her. So I should be the god of all things Lenny, but I think that the beautiful thing about characters and books is once you put them out there, they're for everyone to, the way I think she looks, and yeah, she's got a bit of a description in there. Um, the way I think she looks is very different to the way other people think she looks. Likewise with Ned. Like I have a type in mind for him, but I'm sure other people have pictured him completely different. So putting her out there with those character traits and that sort of thing, it was like I don't own her anymore. It's for other people to decide. But her reactions to things and the way she wants everything to be the same, I think, is very much born from both the trauma and because I do think if she was diagnosed or sought diagnosis, which isn't part of this story, um, but she would be autistic as well, I would imagine, just because of the way she, especially with the eating, the things that are her comforts are the familiar. And I think we've all been there. And I'm more now than I ever was a bit of a homebody. Like I like being comfortable. I like the things I like. Um, I'm sounding more and more like Lenny Marks the more I talk about it. I've like talked myself into being Lenny. I'm okay with that. Shit, yeah.
That's what to say. But she does find happiness is unstable and unreliable, is what she says. And so I wanted to get into this idea of happiness because
Mm,
there was a quote in there, and I believe it was Maureen. No, it may have been Faye. I don't remember which of the two women said happiness is overrated.
yeah. Maybe that
Um,
was Maureen. No, I can't remember either. I should know that.
yeah, you're the god of all things, Lenny. So you know.
I know. I know.
No, so what did you mean by that? And just kind of talk about that concept because it is a very interesting one because it didn't come from Lenny. Like I would
Yeah.
expect that to come from Lenny, but it didn't.
Yeah, it's weird. I think so I remember describing to someone once, so this is kind of from my own experiences too that this has come about because I do believe that happiness is overrated. Like not that I don't want happiness. I want my kids to be happy. But generally speaking, you're not going to be happy 100% of the time. And I think we really teach it now. And like, as you said at the start, I've got a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and two 2-year-olds. There's a lot of emotions in my house, including my own and my husband, Ross. So that having my daughter will say to me, "Oh, I'm feeling bad," and I'm like, "Well, it's not bad. It's just a different part of the day." And so I think that by instilling in people that you need to be happy, um, it can be quite distracting. And I described myself as somebody to somebody once as what I'd like is contentment. I would like to be content because I think that that covers a lot of things. And they said contented is boring. Contentment means boring. And I'm like, no, see, I don't think so. I think there's yeah, I think it really depends on the way you figure it. But happiness, I don't mean walking around with a smile on your face 24/7 because that's a toxic level of happiness.
Yeah,
Drug
Barbie and
or
Barbie. Yeah.
Barbie, yeah, or like high level drug usage. Um, either way, whatever works for you. But I think you can be happy, but still let in all those emotions. You can cry, you can, have your breakdowns, and it gives you the perspective to know what it really means and looks like to actually be happy and enjoying and like would Lenny have sought out somebody like and sought out's probably the wrong term, but somebody like Ned? He might not have been. No, I don't picture Ned as even being classically handsome, right? I just think he's kind of like this burly big bloke who's a bit of a nerd. Would she have gone looking for him? Would anybody have gone looking for him? I don't know. But she's got that perspective now in her life of what happiness means, and it's more than, a material thing. It's more than looks. And I think that that's the important stuff
Yeah.
to know. And I think Faye in her house, and I love Faye. I would write a whole book on Faye. I just loved writing her. She's got that pillow that says good vibes only. And Lenny looks at it and goes, why aren't, average vibes just okay sometimes? And, there was that whole period of time we had all these home goods about, live, love, laugh, and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, life is messy and it's complicated and you can be more than one thing. So that's kind of, yeah, happiness is a bit unreliable. Whereas, there's better ways, I think, to describe what I would like to feel and for my children to have as a life sort of mantra.
Agree, but for Lenny, not only does she not want the high of happiness, she also doesn't want to deal with the lows of despair or sadness because those are obviously triggers, I'm sure. We don't know so much at the beginning, but she just wants to stay right in the middle, don't let any waves come near her, in other words.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too because my point with writing this book as well and picking, so I work in the police force and there's a lot of police procedural books out there, and I very purposefully didn't write a book with a police point of view or a police um, with all the the methodology and the breaking it down because I wanted it to be very much your every person. So yeah, well, Lenny is probably a bit quirkier and a bit more to an extent than some people. I wanted her to be any of the school teachers over at my daughter's primary school. Any, like the neighbor you say hello to but don't really know anything about. Though, just your everyday person. And I think it's really interesting when you get a little glimpse of what's be in some people's life, or it's the person that's rude to you at the shops, and you're like, I wonder if they're just having a really bad day. Like maybe this just isn't their day. Um, and that doesn't always work because sometimes you want to yell at somebody that's cut you off. And that's cool too. You can do that. But I just think it's really interesting that, you've got a lot of people just like Lenny. They're functioning fine. They're not so happy, but they're not sad enough to really register on anybody's either worried or, like she's certainly not getting medical intervention for, mental health or depression or anything like that. She's just running in the middle. And without, the phase of the world or Kira or without this letter arriving for Lenny, would she have just kept going that way? Yes, probably. And would she have been fine? Yeah, probably. So, and I think there's so many people that are just living in that pattern of just like push it down, hope for the best, and carry on. And I don't know if that's good or bad because if you're getting by, you're getting by. But I just, every person in the world has this whole story and this whole backstory. And for some people, getting out your door every day is an achievement. Like to think of what Lenny went through as a child and the way your brain works and the development of it, she is, she might to somebody else look like she's not got a great life. But then you take into account all of that stuff and you go, she's a success story. This woman's educated, she's working, she's independently living, she's kind. It's a success, but it all just depends on, I guess, perspective and expectations, maybe.
Well, Leslie in the chat box said, I think this was from before, but on topic, I was wondering if her character traits were from autism or trauma as well. She said this came up in another thriller, which made me think about it differently. Leslie, I'm wondering if this was Strange Sally Diamond, because this is
I was
one,
just thinking that too.
yeah, because we read that, the LBs read that and talked to Liz Nugent, and it was a phenomenal book, but also we got to be inside her head, and now we're inside Lenny's as our pretty much our sole narrator. I mean, she is our eyes and ears. How was that experience, like writing this character and trying to figure out how she would see the world differently, because she does have a very specific um, point of view. And
So
Leslie, yes, it was Strange Sally Diamond.
I need to touch on Strange Sally Diamond for a moment because I had a lot of my reviews were saying this reminds me of Strange Sally Diamond, and I'm like, I need to read this book. I want to know what it's about. And there was even the Teddy. There's a Teddy reference in Strange Sally Diamond and in Lenny. But oh my God, do they finish in different directions? Like, and Strange Sally Diamond, I loved it, and I love that darkness about books. But it was funny because I lent it to a friend, and he's one of the school dads, and he also writes. And I said, this gets compared to Lenny. And well, he told me he loves Lenny, and he has to because he sees me face to face, so he can't, has to. Um, and then he brought it back to me the week after at our Monday morning coffee, and he goes, "Thanks for traumatizing me." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I suppose." Like, because if you go into it thinking Lenny, like, there's an uplifting hopefulness about Lenny, or upkill, as one of my author friends call it. It's, uplifting killing books, so upkill. Um, Whereas Sally, it's got its uplifting moments, but it's dark, isn't it? Like it went down a path I did not expect it to go, which I love about books. I love when I'm um, misled, but in a believable way. So I've got to go back and listen to your talk with Liz because I'm so interested to hear what goes on in her head.
Oh, it's fascinating. If y'all haven't watched it or haven't read that book, please do. And the spoiler I will give, and I always tell people this because it's the hook, there are actually two endings to that book.
You
So
mean,
yeah, so I'm not sure which version Australia got, but there are two
oh,
different books. So if you haven't, it's really awesome to read and then listen to her talk about it. So you'll get a real treat after this.
I want the alternate ending, and maybe that alternate ending. Um, okay, I'm gonna go listen to that. Okay, we're now in a book talk about Strange Sally Diamond. So everybody, like, sorry, we've moved on from Lenny. We're on with
We're now
Strange Sally
inside. I'm
Diamond.
going to bring us back. We're now inside Lenny's brain. How
Um,
did you tackle that?
Lenny's brain. So I actually thought with some of the traits that I may have exaggerated them too far. So with her, so I, as far as I know, am not neurodivergent, but certainly have people in my life that are. And I got a couple of people that are and who have children that are neurodivergent read the book in its early stages because I wanted to know that I wasn't making it um, stereotypical is a hard word because I don't always think a stereotype is a bad thing because I think sometimes it's a stereotype for a reason. But I wanted it to not be a cartoonish description of,
Yeah.
yeah. And I also wanted it to be, the joke was never meant to be on Lenny. So yeah, she's being picked on, etc. But I never wanted her to be pitied or oh, now I'm stuck reading the comments. Wouldn't live up to her potential. See, and then you get people that say neurodivergence is their superpower. So I've got an author friend that writes and got her, it's so funny, her texts, and I've done it in a live conversation with her. And her brain, it's just firing. It's firing so many shots. How she ever gets the ability to sit down and just focus on her book is amazing. So there's a superpower to it, and there's also limitations, but there is for, I feel like, without dismissing, that it's a different set of challenges that there's so much good from it as well. Like I would like to think that if one of my children were diagnosed with a with autism or ADHD, that I would just go, cool, now I know, let's tackle this because there is a lot of information out there as well. So what can I do to make your life easier? Because um yeah, let's untapped potential here. So I disagree with your daughter's pediatrician, Leslie. I don't know if you do. You can put it in the comments. I disagree. Wouldn't live up to her potential, or that, like, it's just perspective, I think. So anyway, writing Lenny, I'm gonna get off the comments box so that I don't keep looking at it. Writing, um, maybe there is a bit of a touch of ADHD here. Writing Lenny was fun because she is so unapologetically herself. She is, she's weird. She eats the same things. She's so comfortable in it, and a little bit oblivious, like with the comments from Amy and Ashley in the staff room. Maybe we all need to be a little bit oblivious, rather than overthinking things. But then the flip side is she does overthink the things and she doesn't think she knows how to dress herself, which still at 42, I don't feel like I know how to dress myself most days. I'm really in my pantsuit era, like a jumpsuit, because I have to make one clothing choice. I don't have to work out what top goes with what pants. So I've got about 7 jumpsuits and I don't have to make any clothing decisions. So there's a lot of things in there that resonate. But with the things like the anagrams, which I loved doing because that's a puzzle I particularly like doing. Um, Not in my head, just randomly, but in the paper, or in the phone apps for it. But they were really fun to write, and have had people approach me at book talks or send me messages that say, I do the same thing, but I only do it with 8-letter words, or I do the same thing, but I only do it with movie titles. And I thought, like, it's actually not an exaggeration. This is the way, and because that was Lenny's calming herself down. So you can see she does it when things are a little bit heightened, and every now and again there's a little clue dropped in there about what's to come, or the emotion, or the sort of the tone of the scene. So she was super fun to write. I actually worried that I wouldn't be happy writing my next book because I missed Lenny, and I spoke about her so much in this house that my daughter speaks about Lenny Marks as if she's part of our family. She knows the name, she knows the title of my book. I actually have convinced her for next year's book week. I don't know if you do book week where the kids all dress up in costumes at school. I've convinced her to be the main character from my second book. So she's gonna, and it's an adult book and it's about murder and stuff. It's highly inappropriate for a 6-year-old, but I've convinced her because this woman wears a pink polo shirt to work. I'm like, you get to wear pink and you'd make me really happy. And she's like, I'm going as Joy Moody. Great. Um, but see, I've wandered off on a tangent there. But Lenny was fun to write, and I also really loved writing one character the whole way through. So rather than switching between characters and chapters, if it wasn't a scene Lenny would have seen or heard herself, it wasn't in the book, which poses some challenges. But I loved it. I just felt like it was all immersive. It was her, and sometimes you read a book and you get to a chapter and you're like, like flick through that because you want to get back to the one you like. So that was really fun. Writing Lenny. So yeah, she was a delight, and I think just smatterings of here, there, and everywhere. Um, and I've just stolen things. I've stolen from people. Um,
Wait,
Personality.
the police officer is admitting to theft. I'm just
You're,
putting that out
you're
there, right?
allowed to you're allowed to steal personality traits. You're not allowed to steal identities, and you're not allowed to steal physical things, people, except if they're succulents. Like they overgrow in people's garden. I don't buy succulents. I snap them off people's succulents, and my husband is horrified. He really doesn't like going on walks with me. I will also pull people's weeds out of their front gardens. Like, if it's accessible from the footpath, I'm not creeping into people's backyards. Could you just delete all this? Everybody pretend you never saw this.
Oh, this is awesome. I will say I am so glad that we got to stay in Lenny's head because I appreciated her point of view. And I think it would have been too turbulent to go to Ned or to go to Kira or to Faye. Like I think it was important for us to absorb her life and her perspective to understand where she's coming from and what her goals and where she, what she wanted to do in life. So I loved that part of it. So I appreciate you sticking with Lenny personally. I loved it.
Well, I felt like I had enough story to tell from her. And I think any one character really, you could probably get your 90,000 words out of. But that was not an effort to get her words on the page. And obviously that version of it, the final version, there's been, other chapters and words chopped and editing and everything. I think that's a beautiful, wonderful version of what I imagined it to be, with help from editors and help from friends who've read it and stuff like that. But staying in her head was easy, and it was in so in particular because like if you're not writing, sometimes it's just percolating, and so I only had. When I was writing Lenny, I'm just trying to think which child I'd had. So I had my daughter, and I think I'd just had my son. So it was 2 kids ago. Like I had so much time on my hands. Um, and I remember being in the garden. And so this is about Malcolm, the brother, not the dog. So, spoiler ahead for anybody that wants to block their ears. Um, so I was in the garden, and my daughter at the time, she had an imaginary friend called Baby Chick, and Baby Chick would follow her everywhere. And I knew there was this loss in the book, and I knew it was her brother, but I hadn't worked in yet that she had an imaginary friend who would end up being so realistic because it was the memory of her brother. Um, which it's just now that I look at it, I'm like, that fits so well the whole time, but it wasn't there originally. And then we are out in the garden and I was pottering and, had my little shovel and stuff. And my daughter said to me something about Baby Chick, and I went smack with with my shovel on Baby Chick, right? Who doesn't exist. So I didn't assault anyone. I have not now just admitted to an assault. She was properly upset. Like she just, um, like her face dropped and she's gone, Mum, like really horrified. And I'm like, oh, like this baby chick is real to you, and I can make. Oh, I did apologize to her and we mended things, and I'm like, oh, I was just joking and I didn't really hurt baby chick, and come here baby chick, and give baby chick a cuddle. And what I've also noticed with that imaginary friend, but I didn't realize as much at the time, was baby chick came out when she was uncomfortable or in a new situation. So that made her feel really that was her little safety blanket, security blanket, without actually physically having something there. So I now feel like I want to insert an imaginary friend in every book because I just feel like it makes sense, especially for, young people. I don't think I had one. I think I tried to have an imaginary friend when I was younger and it didn't stick. I kept forgetting about it, but it seemed like a great thing to do. But I never got around to, keeping it up. I was probably a bit too distracted or busy. But yeah, those sort of little elements picked from, the times. And I try and say to people, if you're time poor, it doesn't matter. There's things that will come into your head that won't come when you're sitting down at the typewriter and things like that. That moment, um, it struck me as hard as it struck Baby Chick with my little shovel.
Well, it's quintessential. I mean, like everybody in the chat, like we loved that surprise and it was so meaningful. And okay, you said though that you loved and it was very easy in Lenny's head. So how long
Yeah,
did it take you to write this novel? And with the caveat that it sounded like from your comment author's note that the lead up to writing this took a
yeah,
while and it was like
yeah.
a Sally Hepworth story. So you have to fill us in.
Right. So Sally Hepworth came to our book club. She was friends with, so she actually doesn't live far from where I do. So I didn't know anything about her, and we had a book club that we formed. And one of the women in the group had worked with Sally when Sally was working in, I think it was HR or PR or something. So along she came, and we all read her book, The Mother's Promise. And I'm sure there's quite a few Sally Hepworth fans, but that was one sort of before her crime breakthrough, and they were still set in the States. Anyway, so the end of this book club, and she says, I hear there's some police officers in this group. And we're like, yeah. And usually you don't admit to this because somebody wants to ask you about some crime, or like, oh, somebody keeps breaking into my car, or I got a ticket for doing this. That seems unfair. Or do you know my brother-in-law twice removed who's, whatever. It never precedes something decent. And she goes, well, I've got a new book that I've written. It's set in Melbourne, and I'd just love to know if the police stuff is accurate. And I'm like, oh, sign me up. I'll read your book. So the three of us in that group read the book. We caught up with her after for a coffee, and I think that book was the mother-in-law, which I loved. I think it was the mother-in-law. Anyway, and so we caught up with her for a coffee, and then I'm like, I've always wanted to write a book, and because I did high school, I just wrote flat out, and then I just put it away, stopped. And she said, well, just write one. And it wasn't meant to be a challenge, but my tightly wound brain went, oh, well, then I will. Okay. And also, I think so now Sally is like, bigger than, like she's sort of a fixture of the, book world, and has won awards, and she's wildly successful. Back at like the Mother's Promise, as successful as she was still just like she was a mum. And her youngest daughter was quite young then. And I think when I came to this meeting, I had like a babe in my arms, like because I was thinking, I don't have any time. I've got one child. This child sleeps on me. Like I don't have a free hand all day, which in hindsight you realize is not exactly true. Um, and I'm like, well, she's done it. Okay, well, I could give it a go. And then so I just started writing really as a maternity leave sanity project. So that was in the lead up. So my daughter's almost 7. So I had a very young baby when I started. I wrote that first book just because I wanted to see if I could. So I just had to finish something, like you just have to give yourself time frames or deadlines. That book went nowhere, but it taught me so much about the submission process, the querying process. Sally helped me again with those things. And so I did another author, Lisa Ireland, who is published in Australia but not yet overseas. But she's been in the book industry for 10 years. So just their information and the amount of resources that are available online for writers without you having to purchase courses and stuff. Because sometimes that's when you still think of it as a hobby and when you're doing it in your spare time, you don't want to, it's hard to invest, $3,000 in a mentorship. And not to say they're not worthwhile, but there are free resources for people and podcasts and, all the works. So then when I went on to write Lenny, I had, I was on maternity leave with my son. So we had, and then can I even mention the word COVID because I feel like it traumatizes people to mention it. But we had a lot of really hard lockdowns in Melbourne. So for a while there, we couldn't go 5 kilometers from our house. So we had like a 5 kilometer zone. We were only allowed outside for an hour to exercise. So you couldn't leave your house unless you were exercising for an hour. You weren't allowed, so you couldn't even see family if they weren't living with you. So, and I'm sure you guys had all different versions of lockdowns. So I was at home with my 2 kids, so we had the same routine every day. And in doing that, my son is a brilliant sleeper because it was never like, oh, should we go to library story time? It was like, well, let's walk around the block, get ourselves a takeaway coffee, and then we're going home and he sleeps. She watches TV and I'm going to write. And that was every day's goal. So I can't even remember what your original question was. Did that answer it?
Yeah, we're talking about you writing, how fast you
Oh,
wrote. But
Lenny was 18.
before you even go beyond that, I'm seeing
Yeah,
even more similarities with Lenny and you. Like Sally gave you this challenge.
yeah,
Same thing with Lenny. Like you're going to go
yeah.
into
This is true.
elementary education, and she was like, "Is that a challenge? I'm taking it."
Yeah.
Same
Well, yeah, this
action.
is true. And so I had my twins after I'd finished Lenny. So it took about 18 months from till I felt comfortable with putting it out for submission. And that was after a few rounds of editing, some beta readers. Um, put it out at about 18 months. And I'd had my twins just after I signed the contract for it, because I didn't tell my publisher I was pregnant with twins, because I thought, what if they don't sign me up? What if they don't think I've got it in me to edit it? Isn't that terrible? But because I'm in a very male-dominated workplace in the police force, it can be detrimental to be a childbearing woman, and it shouldn't be. But I just thought, on the off chance that these guys go, this woman hasn't got it in her, I'm not taking this risk. So I had the twins, but my one of my twins has the middle name of Faye because I loved that character so much. And there is a family name. It's a great aunt of mine that was Faye, and I'm like, I'm putting it in one of the baby's names. No one's named Lenny though.
Oh, I loved Faye. I want to go back a little bit because you did mention these anagrams, like these her calm down method with the
Yeah.
words. And every time it came up, it seemed like you mentioned clues, but they were very specific, like with your choices. And it seemed like it did give us even more insight into what she was feeling. And I thought that was
Yeah.
such a clever way to give us all this without, you know, really having to think about it.
Thank you. I was worried it wouldn't sound very or it wouldn't read well for the audiobook because on the page is so much different, and I don't know if any of the people here did it on an audiobook. I think that you did. Did it work all right?
I thought it was great because it
Yeah.
was such a fast staccato and
Yeah.
it was very monotone, like like you could just see her brain
Yeah.
processing it. It was great.
Yeah. That's perfect. And that narrator, she's I don't know if she's on a show that's over, I don't know if they've come overseas, but she's an Australian actress. And when I found out she was narrating it, I had like a little, oh my God, meltdown, overwhelming moment because I was currently watching the show with my husband that she was in. And then on Instagram, she followed me, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like one of those scam ones. You know how you see Jason Statham follows you, or, you know, Brad Pitt 9168554, and I'm like, oh, and then I went, that's a weird name to scam because she's not wildly, like, she's not Taylor Swift. And so then I went in there and I, went on my detective hunt, and I'm like, oh, she's following me. I wonder if she's the actress called Annie that is reading the audiobook. And I had like a proper like I was on a high for days after that. I was so thrilled. But she did a great job. And she also narrates the second book because the second one's out here in Australia. Um, but she narrates that one as well. And I could just have her read to me all day long. But the anagrams were fun. Funnily enough, I knew she was going to do something like that, something calming, something like that was going to be one of her neuroses. But at first, it was her scoring the words with Scrabble, as if like the Scrabble numbers,
Yeah,
which
Adam.
are for the people,
Yeah.
yeah, add them up and go, oh, that's worth 14 points. And then at some point, I just went, I don't, it's a bit clunky. Like there's still a bit of thought in that, and I like that, but it was a bit clunky. And also, Words with Friends players know, and it's a bit old now, Words with Friends, but Words with Friends players know that Scrabble tiles are scored differently. And I thought people are going to be adding this up and going, oh, she doesn't know that, Scrabble tiles don't equal that. And I thought, I don't want that feedback. I don't want that controversy. So I went with the anagrams, and I think I ended up cutting a few out because my publisher thought you've gone a bit over the top. But there is one in there, and I can't remember. Is it filicide? Is in there somewhere about a father killing a child, the term for that, and I think it's filicide. That is in one of the anagrams, and that is before you find out how Malcolm died. And so that was my little sprinklings in there.
Easter egg. We didn't, I don't know
Yeah.
that I that one. I want to go back and check it now, but I think I think I started paying attention to it more and more as it went on because then I was more inside Lenny's head and I was understanding her. And it just I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
What a good moderator you've got. I just realized Anissa is in here, and I've spoken to you on Instagram. She reached out to me. Thank you. Thanks all for reading though, and it's been so nice to come along.
Well, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions and then we're going to turn it over to our awesome readers and they can ask you a question as well. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Fate or coincidence?
Coincidence.
Do you like to go out or stay in?
Stay easy.
Do you like to cook or heat up?
Heat up.
I almost knew that was going to be it. What's your favorite frozen meal?
Oh, good question. You know what? I love potato gems, and I don't know if you get them. Just
Oh,
like
what is this?
little, they're like little nuggets of potato. They're more, and so it's not like a whole meal, but you just like shove them in the oven, and they're better than chips. Better than chips.
Okay, okay, we have to
Yeah.
find out. Do you like to drive a car, ride a bike, or walk more?
Drive a car. I'm gonna put my podcast on.
Favorite Friends episode? Maybe I should ask it of Gary to see what his favorite is.
My poor husband. Um, Favorite Friends episode would be, oh, there's so many good ones. You know, I really like it when Phoebe, and I don't know which one it's called, but Phoebe knows that Rachel is the one that did the pregnancy test and she tells her she's not really pregnant. And then it flips. Do you remember that one? And then she's like, oh, well, like, psych, you're pregnant. She shows her the pregnancy test and she's like, oh, that was a dangerous game. Or she says something to her like that. That is a good episode. That,
I
that,
love that
that,
you use those though. The titles, like the one where for
yeah.
Lenny, like to process what's going on as well. It was awesome. All right.
And, you know, that wasn't the original name of the book either, but it works.
Yeah. Oh, really? What?
Yeah.
When did that happen? I'm like you. I'm like off of my rapid fire now. I got to find out what.
Oh,
Tell me.
sorry. It was called The Almost Truths of Lenny Marks, which I liked. I thought it was nice. It was quirky. And then they said, no, we want it punchier. We want it more crimey. How about Lenny Marks gets away with murder? Um, it was suggested the one where Lenny Marks gets away with murder, and I'm like, no. And they're like, the Lenny Marks gets away with murder, and I went, no. Anyway, and then they kept asking, and I'm like, you know what? I'm heavily pregnant with twins over here. I've got high blood pressure. Call it what you want. And so they did, and I'm so glad they did. And this is why you should listen to the sales team at a big publisher because they actually know what they're talking about, as opposed to the debut author that's hanging on to something she thought up, you know. Okay, back to rapid fire.
Okay, back to rapid fire. Do you have a favorite Buffy character?
Cordelia.
And Mamas and Papas or Led Zeppelin?
Oh, Led Zeppelin. Oh, yeah, Led Zeppelin.
Awesome. Thank
I
you so
love
much.
your rapid fire.
All right, team. Who here wants to ask Kerryn a question? If you do, go ahead and raise your hand and I will unmute you and get you spotlighted. If not, y'all know I have a million questions and I think there may actually be some. Anissa, I'm gonna let you go first. Go ahead.
Hi, Albie. Hi, Karen.
Hi.
It's nice to hear that Sally Hepworth had a part in your getting you to finally write. Sally's a good friend of ours. I've met her a couple of times when she's been here in the U.S. and but I'm real curious as to one, was there a book that you read when you were younger that maybe that led you to think that you wanted to be an author? And also within Lenny, what was your favorite scene to write and why?
Oh, excellent, excellent questions. And yes, I love Sally too. Isn't she just wonderful? Okay. The I don't know if you had them over there, but there's an author called John Marsden, and he wrote the Tomorrow When the War Began series. And they were compelling. It was like this near future Australia where a war started while these kids were off camping and they've come back and everybody is held captive and then they just get around like blowing stuff up and trying to like run some sort of revolution from the ground. And I think it got me in a couple of ways because it was compelling and it was brilliant and there was like 8 in the set and always had my head in a book. So that was great and I can see why the kids love these series. You know how YA and series just seems to be the thing. And I get it because they get into a character and you just hang on. These guys I just loved. But pretty much books in general. Like I spent, so my school bus after school in high school came about an hour after the bell because of where I lived to get there. So every afternoon after school, I would go sit in the library. And the librarians, if they were throwing books out, they would give me the option to take them. So I got Christine by Stephen King off them that way. And I'm not sure that I should have read that early. But they didn't, they just like, I just devoured books and they just kind of let me have free run of the library. I'd go use their computers and stuff because they're like, oh, this is a book lover. She's not going to do anything wrong by us. And I never ever would. So books in general I loved, but I put it down when I, sort of turned 18, 19 because I knew I wasn't studying it, and just kept reading. And I'm kind of glad I did it that way because I feel like there's people that have written books at a younger age, um, that have been incredible, but I don't think I had it in me then. I think that the experience I've brought to it by writing at 40 instead of 25, are what made the book, and also my personal drive to get there. Like I was there for it. And favorite scene in the book to write, I did really like when Lenny approaches, um, I can't even remember what I called him. Hoodie. Did I call him Hoodie? The guy that used to own Beast, the dog that became Malcolm. What did I call him in the book? I
Jace?
can't remember. Was it Jace? Oh, and his friend was Hoodie because I think I called his friend Beanie and then they said it sounds too much like Beast. Jace. Jace, the guy in the bush. And she approaches him again and she tells him, that, if you ever come near me, I will make hell rain down upon that swamp of a home you have or whatever. Just that sort of comeuppance, and that she can go into bat for somebody, which is the dog, that is not able to defend themselves. And also, Jace, you piece of shit, don't do that to dogs. Um, because that is as close as I will ever get to writing about animal abuse because it is, you could lose a lot of people from them thinking that that's part of the book because I know people don't want to read about it, but I needed for her to liberate that dog by seeing something, bad enough, not just a dog tied up in a kennel, but like actually seeing something. So that was probably one of my favorite scenes because it just showed this full circle of Lenny just going into bat where she wanted to do it in the years earlier but couldn't.
That was a great scene. I kind of with her, like I wish someone would have recorded it as a bystander so she could have had that in her pocket every time she needed to watch to get that strength. So yeah.
Yeah, just and then because she wanders off and meets
Then she goes to
runs
the grocery
into
store, right? Is that when she goes to the grocery store and tells off Ned's dad
yeah,
in the grocery
it
clerk?
kicks off. Yeah, she has a good day then because then she goes and she sees Amy who's sleeping with Kurt. Yeah, and tells her to, you should like yourself better than this, which I like because rather than, don't need to be firing off, you're a slut or a home wrecker, any of those things, but you should like yourself better than this. I think that's sort of, when your parents are disappointed in you rather than mad at you, like it was that sort of level of I'm very disappointed here that I thought that's gonna pack the best punch. Yeah, and then she goes and tells Ed off for being a jerk to Ned. So she's just firing on all cylinders that day and then goes home to sleep, which you would because that's exhausting. You can't run around saving everybody and then not need a nap.
Well, great question, Anissa. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you. And thanks for reaching out online.
Jennifer says in the chat box, she wants to know about this new book, which I know is called Joy Moody is Out of Time. You said it's released
Oh, yeah.
in Australia, but can you give us any news? Is it coming to the US and when?
This is the cover for the US version. Oh, can you see it?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, wait.
Uh,
There we go. Yeah. Oh, that's
so
cool.
it's set in a laundromat, hence the laundry on the cover. This is my dream cover because I asked, don't tell my Australian publishers, I said, can you put a washing machine on the cover? And I think they thought I was a bit nuts. And that's the cover. Oh, hold on. Hold on. Oh, oh no. This is the cover I got in Australia, right? Which I
Yeah.
still really like, but I
But
love the
that's
lawn.
like a casket.
What's that?
Is that a casket?
Yes, The Shadow is a casket. So Joy Moody is Out of Time is book two, and it's set in a laundromat in a Bayside suburb of Melbourne. And they live behind the laundromat, Joy and her two identical twin daughters which I also have identical twin daughters. And she's told them for years that they have to stay isolated, they have to stay away from people because they're significant to the future, and that she's there to protect them. So they've been homeschooled, they've been isolated. Then their 21st birthday is coming, and that is the day she said, something will happen on your 21st birthday, then you'll know, what I've been going on about, etc. But instead of something happening, she dies. So Joy Moody dies. So this isn't a spoiler. Joy Moody is literally out of time. And then the girls have to unpack for the rest of the story what their life is without their mother in it, and what's going on, because she's told them quite a few lies, and also if Joy is forgivable. So if she's more forgivable in death than she probably would have been in life. So it's a really fun book. And can I just say, writing Joy Moody on the back of Lenny Marks was a weird experience because she is not instantly likable, and I wanted her to be divisive because I wanted people to go, oh, I like she's taking it a bit far there, but I kind of get what she did. Or my best friend says, I can't come at her. She's done the wrong thing, because she's very, like, the way she thinks about things, very black and white. Whereas other people are like, oh no, I love Joy and I see why she did it. So I'm excited for that to come out. It's out in August next year.
Okay.
Yeah, August next year. So yeah, hopefully you will like it. But don't go in thinking it's Lenny version 2. It is very different, but it's got the same, like, beautiful community vibe. Like, I love those side characters and how they're the people that are there every day, and you don't realize they're there every day until somebody like, something happens, or yeah, you have to step up. And then you've got Kira bringing you in donuts and putting them on your desk, with a card from her kids, and just that overwhelming moment. I love writing those little bits in there too. I just feel like, they're the things that, those random acts of kindness that people aren't recording and putting on their social media, um, are what makes the world seem okay.
Agreed.
I've gone
Jennifer,
very philosophical there.
Jennifer has part two to this question, which
Yeah.
I love that she asked. She wants to know, what are you reading now? And I will add on to that. Are there any other books that you'd like to recommend to us?
Oh, I so would. And I'm going to see if I can't turn my background off. Oh, hold on. Adjust my background. I'm just going to turn it off, and you're going to see my really boring background for a minute, because otherwise you can't see the books. So I've just finished. So this is out, I think, with a different cover in the US, Leave the Girls Behind. And it's the writer that wrote Before You Knew My Name, which was like 2022 smash hit. I get to interview her tonight at a local library, which is really cool. So, but it is a fantastic book, and it's got that same, like, crime adjacent, because I like to call Lenny Marks crime adjacent, not pure crime. Crime adjacent. Um, there's a bit of feminist power without being jammed down your throat, um, with a bit of quirkiness to it as well. And then I've not like this is the ARC cover, Pictures of You by Emma Gray, and also my son drew on it. So now it is truly a unique original. There's nothing sacred in this house, I'll tell you what. But that's a beautiful book. So Pictures of You, and look at me just spruiking Aussie authors. Actually, Jacqueline Bublitz is New Zealand author, so we'll claim her. We claim everybody from New Zealand unless we don't like them, and then we push them back across the Tasman. Pictures of You by Emma Gray, beautiful book. She writes so well. It's so clever. And I love that her books are never one thing. So they're funny, they're sad, and they're touching but also hilarious at the same time. Like, it's got all the things. And the other one thing that I'm reading, because I know it's come out in the States and I don't have the actual book because it's on my Kindle, I'm reading the next book by an author called Michael Thompson, another Aussie author. But his first book, How to Be Remembered, if you just want to be blown away by just this beautiful, hopeful, gorgeous book, read Michael Thompson's book, and then get ready for his next book, because I think it's coming out everywhere next year, because I've almost finished reading it and I've lost sleep because it's just beautiful and I want to finish it. So there's my books that I'm reading at the moment.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of great books, and I'm sure I could see everybody writing down because these are all things that we're going to be picking up soon, I'm sure, and we'll be excited to look for your book in August. There was so much that I didn't get to talk to you about tonight. Like, Yes, Joy Moody out of time. But I wanted to talk about the healing, the Malay healing, and I'm going to look that up. I think I'm going to do a deep dive on that because I thought that was fascinating. Your love of obviously the Hobbits. I assume that's a love of yours too, because you had that on your webpage, and I loved that she constantly brought up these Hobbit references. I mean, there's so much awesomeness in this book. And the fact that Lenny got called out for having to love herself and be okay with it because she loved Malcolm, the dog. Like the whole thing. I loved all of it. Fantastic
So
book.
glad. It is just so mind-blowing to me that this little story from where she lives is a real place. I've made it Selby South, but there's a Selby and there's a Belgrave, and it's a weird little pocket of unless you're from Belgrave, and I'm sorry to call it weird, but it's a weird place in Victoria. But I just love that this tiny little pocket near where I live is now out there for so many people to read about, and this character that I made up in my head is just out there, and she's with people. And please, if I haven't answered your question or there's questions, hit me up on the socials. I try and get back to everybody. I love hearing from people that have read my books. I mean, only if you've got nice things to say. Don't want to hear anything bad. But yeah, ultimately, like I hope it's just a book that it finishes with like a bit of uplift to the end, a bit of hope, because I love that about things. You can murder people, but you can also feel good about the world.
Here, thank you so much for joining us. Like, I know this is in the middle of your day, so I appreciate you logging in. Readers out there, thanks for spending your Sunday night with us. Please make sure you check out her Instagram. It's really an awesome, plus her website. She's got book club questions, and I think this is a fantastic book for a book club to take on because there's just so much to discuss. If y'all would you please follow the LB's The Lover of Books on Facebook? My bookstagram is LB The Lover of Books. You can find me there as well for reviews, recommendations, author chats. But just so y'all know, December 1, we're going to be changing it up a little bit. And we're starting our Christmas in December series. And we're going to kick it off with Christy Woodson Harvey with her latest, A Happier Life, where she's going to reveal some news. And then 1 week later, we're going to be talking to Catherine Newman about her summer breakout novel, Sandwich. So if you have plenty of time to read both of those and get those in over the holiday break, maybe, and then come join us. But as always, just appreciate you all joining us. If you know of an author that you would like to chat with, please let me know. That's how I found this amazing author, is someone reached out and said, you've got to read this book. She would be perfect. So I really appreciate that. And I had such a great night tonight. We're thankful so much that Lenny Marks dreams in other worlds, and that you also are like that, and you can't contain your stories. So thank you so much for your everyday, extraordinary, ordinary stories. It was, what's the phrase? Almost completely perfect night. So thank you so much. Y'all have a fabulous start to your week. And anything else you want to say, Kerryn?
No, thank you so much. Thank you for taking your time. And Laura Beth, I could listen to you talk all day. Your accent, it's just beautiful. You should narrate books.
Well, I that's literally what I said. I was like, I can't wait to hear her accent. Like I've been publicizing this as well because I am in love with your accent. So maybe we want to just set up a hourly call, like a week, once a week, we could just sort of chill
A
out.
mutual accent admiration society.
Exactly.
I love it. Thank you, though. Thanks for having me along, and I really appreciate you guys all.
We'll be looking for Joy Moody is out of time. So thank you so much for everybody, and y'all have a great week.
Thank you.